Hey, what's up, guys? Drake Foley here, your host of the Whether or Not podcast, along with my co-host, Colin Welty.
What's up, everybody? How's it going?
I hope it's going good. You know, we're vibing on this Friday. I'm recording our first episode. So, I guess the first thing we're going to do is, talk about ourselves and, introduce you guys to us.
Exactly. Just give you the deets on what's happening.
Why did I say deets? I don't know. But, my name's Drake, of course. I'm from North Carolina, one of the most weird weather states, I guess you can say, because we have beaches and mountains in the same area. It's a nice place to live, I guess, if you like being humid all the time. I mean, it's not Florida, but it's a pretty nice place.
I've been to North Carolina once. It was really, really pretty, but it was really, really humid because we were on the coast for a little bit. But Charlotte, what a pretty city.
Charlotte is a very pretty city. Do you want to tell them a little bit of stuff about you, Colin?
Yeah, so my name is Colin Welty. I am from Texas, the DFW area to be specific. I have a stuffy nose today, so if I sound like I'm really stuffy, it's because I have really bad allergies right now. There's a cold front that's moving in as we're recording this, and the cedar is being whipped up everywhere. It's insane, but I mean, I've been unable to breathe out of my nose the whole day pretty much. But yeah, Texas is also a very interesting state. It's right at the very bottom of Storm Alley, of Tornado Alley there. We occasionally get some tornadic activity. We get a lot of severe weather because we're really close to Oklahoma. And then it's also pretty flat, so that means that weather has a lot of chance to develop, which gives a lot of interesting stuff.
And so, I guess growing up in North Carolina, I did get a lot of severe storms, which I see is probably about the same for Texas. I mean, you're in an area around like a body of water, it's like the Gulf of Mexico, you get a lot of heat off there and a lot of moisture. Like, I had a few, like, I never was in a tornado, but I had a lot of, like, risks, and we had the couple outbreaks and stuff. I know it's probably a lot worse around Dallas, especially the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's been, I remember my first, like, introduction of tornadoes, I was in preschool. Or I might have actually been in daycare, because I went to daycare at the same place I went to preschool.
Yeah.
And it was late in the day, and suddenly all the teachers looked really worried, and they kind of rushed us into the bathroom. They were like, oh, we're in a tornado warning. And we were like, oh, God. So, like, well, we didn't say that. We were, like 4 or 5 year olds. But we went to the bathroom. I remember we all went into the boys' bathroom, which I thought was really funny. And then we like, put our heads down and went our position there. And I just remember being, like, so thrilled by it for some reason. Like, everyone else was super scared, but I was really thrilled by it. I thought that was super cool. And then ever since then, I've just been a little bit fascinated with weather, reading up on clouds, stuff like that. We have a lot of really interesting severe weather events. Like, December 26th, 2015, the day after Christmas, we had an unseasonable warm front that had been there earlier, and then a sharp cold front had come in later that day, and there were tornadoes everywhere around Dallas, and that's when an EF3 hit Rowlett, Texas, which is a relatively populated area, and it went over a pretty busy freeway, so it could have been a lot worse than it actually was. But there's a lot of people I know who lost houses, lost roofs. Thankfully, I don't know anyone who passed away, but I mean, that was a very severe weather system that happened in December. So we kind of get year-round severe weather in Dallas just because there's such a big chance for anything to happen.
Yeah. And, like, my, like, reason, I got into, like, the whole, like, weather area, like, fascination was April 16th, 2011 was North Carolina's, like, tornado outbreak, and I mean, we didn't have anything near, like, April 27th, like, EF5 levels, but it was my first, like, high risk, and there was a tornado that hit not even 30 minutes from my house, and going and seeing, like, EF3 damage is, like, you never really think you'll see that. Like, I've seen trees down and stuff before from, like, straight line winds, but it's different. Like, I think really what made me was like, oh, I need to get into this. I saw a car on top of another car flipped upside down, and I was just like, I don't understand how something does that. And it hit a school, but luckily it was like, I think a Saturday or Sunday.
Okay, good. So it wasn't like a
there was
Joplin
nobody
incident.
in school, and I was I was going through and we drove around. And it was just surreal to me. And then, I mean, I was already addicted to weather, I guess. I think it came from the fascination of, like, watching, like, hurricanes and stuff. And, like, I know, like, a lot of people say, oh, like, the Weather Channel influenced me in that. Like, I watched the Weather Channel, but I didn't like the whole forecasting aspect of it. I was more a fan of, like, the documentary side of it and seeing, like, how people live through it. And I feel like that's what got me into it. And then, like, when Moore got hit back in 2013, I saw that happen and I was like, well, these kids were in school. Like, this could have been me. So I decided, like, I wanted to, like, raise money for them. And then, like, when I saw, like, everything that, like, I was able to do, I felt like I could get into weather and do that same thing.
Yeah, well, I know, like, something that you've always talked to me a lot about is you got to live through part of Hurricane Florence, because that hit pretty much right on North Carolina, I think. So, like, how was your experience with that? Because, I mean, hurricanes are just, like, really massive tornadoes in essence, so, like, how was getting to experience that, like...
Well, Florence was not as bad as Matthew was, I guess, locally. I mean, because I think they were 2 years apart. Because I think Matthew was 16 and Florence was 18. I think it was something like that. It might have been 15, 17. I'm not, like, really good with the years because I just let's see. I was in freshman. So, yeah, 2016 is when we had Matthew, and we got so much water, like, because the week before we had a really bad, like, thunderstorm come through, and it dropped about 4 or 5 inches of rain.
Wow.
And I've never had, like, a thunderstorm that bad. So we were already out of school, and then I guess there was already a bunch of tree damage and stuff. So then Matthew came through the already, like, flooded roads and stuff, and it, like, took out entire interstates, just, like, flooding. And then you could, like, go, and there was, like, because North Carolina is not the most flat place in the world.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hills. So at the bottom of hills, water would stack up, and you could see, like, around the creeks and stuff, there'd be snakes swimming through the water. Like, it's something that you don't expect. And, like, I lost power, but luckily, like, I was in, like, a wealthier part of, like, my city, and I was able to get power back within, like, 2 days. But you never really experience living, like, through a hurricane until you're really on the coast.
Yeah.
Like, I know, like...
So you get the stronger winds and everything.
Like, you'll get the rainfall. Like, I know Dallas, like, it's in Texas, and Houston gets hit a lot, but you guys might get the rain bands off of that, but you guys don't get the, like, the extreme flooding, I guess.
Yeah, that's what happened with Harvey. So Harvey hit in, I think it was early August 2017. Or maybe actually been late August, I don't know. But it hit Houston in 2017, and it dropped, like, up to 30 inches of rainfall in some places. It was insane. I think it, like, shattered the record for the most rainfall in one day in any place in Texas. But Dallas got really lucky. We only got about 2 inches from the whole event because, it was just like it hits and it stagnates, so then we get a few of the rain bands that come off, but it didn't really affect me at all. But there were lots of people in San Antonio and Houston and Galveston and Corpus Christi and all these places in South and Central Texas that just got inundated. And so it's really fascinating to see how weather can occasionally be so catastrophic and so severe that like things like that happen.
Yeah. And it's weird to think about it because, like, you can be in, like, a location close to it and then the weather doesn't hit you. It's like when you're looking at a storm on radar and then, like, it's like a giant squall line coming towards you and then it just breaks right before your house.
Yeah.
And everybody else gets it and you're just like... That's the thing about weather is it's like you really never know what it's going to do. And that's what's so fascinating about it is because we're in a science where we're supposed to be able to learn how to predict it, but you can never predict it.
Yeah, you can never be perfect. And that's also what's kind of fascinating to me too. It's like part of my thing is like that moral battle between how can we make technology so good that it can predict it as close as possible, but also like having that technology takes away from some of the like most exciting aspects of weather, which is its unpredictability. And it's like one of the things when we were taking our intro to meteorology class last semester, one of the things that really, really stuck with me was by Professor Dr. Martin said that we still don't know why tornadoes form when they do. Or why, like, we can kind of guess, like, 15 to 20 minutes in advance, like, okay, it's going to be here. Or even, like maybe a few hours in advance. It could be like, this is going to be a hot spot. But there is no reason scientifically why a tornado will go down exactly why it does, or why tornadoes strengthen to EF5s. Like, there is still, like, I mean, there's ways to do it, but in terms of, like, accurate, predictable ways, that's something that we still don't know how to do, and that just completely fascinates me because, like, you know, this is like a well-researched science, just like chemistry, biology, and stuff like that is. And like with biology, you know exactly how most diseases are going to affect the human body. And when you get new ones, you can take it like a year and then figure out how it does. Like with the coronavirus, when it was first hitting us, we didn't really know what it was doing. But you take all these biologists, you take all these epidemiologists, you take all these people who understand how diseases work, and then over the span of a few months and over the span of like a year, they can create a vaccine, they can figure out exactly how it works and that kind of stuff. But you take tornadoes, which are a pretty common weather phenomenon because, I mean, it happens every single year. And there's up to hundreds every single year. And yet, we still don't know why they form exactly where they do, or why some supercells will create tornadoes while others don't. And it's like, why some tornadoes will have multiple vorticities on the outside, like the El Reno tornado did, or why others will be really small and really, like, tightly packed, and it's just so fascinating.
Every tornado is different.
Yeah, it's like a snowflake.
You never really can predict what it's going to do. And like, you know, we're in the heart of Tornado Alley. You know,
yeah.
Oklahoma's the state. You go there, everybody's like, you're going to go study tornadoes, and you're going to go, oh, how about those tornadoes? And it's like, well, the thing is we've dealt in, I guess, just the OKC Metro has had like probably more than 10 EF3s or higher in probably the last 2 decades. It's probably more than that. Like El Reno, a lot of people still consider it an EF5, but I mean, I'm going to go with what the National Weather Service says, you know, for scientific, like, actions that, you know, you need to know. It's one of those tornadoes. It was 2.6 miles wide. Like, you can't predict that a tornado is going to be
exactly.
And, like, even this last Easter, like, it hits the Dixie Alley, and they have a 2.5 mile wide tornado that gets really close to breaking that record, and then right behind it is another mile wide EF4, and it's just like, what are you supposed to do? Like, how do you warn people about that? Because
exactly.
It's like, you get rain-wrapped tornadoes, you get tornadoes that are in like low precipitation cells, and it's just, you never know what you're going to get into. And tornadoes hit at any time of the year. You always hear about tornado seasons, what, April through June? Like,
yeah, I mean,
late
it
March.
depends on the region, but that tends to be about the time.
And then you have your, like, late season, like, this early season, like, while we had our ice storm, there was, and, like, our snowstorms, there was tornadoes in a lot of places.
Yeah.
I believe there was, like, an EF3 or 4 that went through Alabama, and then like, not even, like, probably about an hour away from my parents' house, an EF3 went through during the night in North Carolina and killed a couple people.
Yeah, it's just insane. Well, that's why I think everyone should have alerts always on for their weather apps and invest in weather radios and stuff like that, because the most dangerous tornadoes are the ones you can't see, the ones that come at night, because, like, as much as the NWS can do to make sure all the TV broadcasts are showing these storms, make sure that you have all these alerts coming through your phones and stuff like that. If you turn your phone off, you put your phone on silent, you put it away because you don't want to be disturbed in the middle of your sleep, then if you're unlucky, then a tornado goes right through your house and there's nothing you can do about it. But if you have, like, a weather radio and it's always on, it'll come on that, oh, hey, you're in a tornado warning, like, get up, get to shelter and stuff like that. You know, and so that I very much advocate for that.
Yeah, I believe that weather is not taken as seriously as it should be, and I definitely, in future episodes, want to get meteorologists on here, and I want them to talk about, you know, why they think, like, I feel like you have the whole polygon system now, and it used to be they issued it for an entire county, and now, like, I've talked to a couple people about it, and they feel like the warning thing is hey, if you don't see a tornado, you're not worried about it, and the thing is you, most of the time, you aren't able to see it. You have those photogenic tornadoes, or you have, like, your large, like, wedge tornadoes that aren't rain wrapped. Like, that happens. But most of the time, you'll get your, like, on, like, derechos, or, like, you'll get your, like, QLCS tornadoes.
Yeah.
Those are usually in high precipitation cells. You can't see them, and they're not always like super like strong, but a tornado can kill you. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, and another thing that a lot of people forget about, and this is something that made the El Reno tornado really dangerous, is like when we say the El Reno tornado was 2.6 miles wide, the condensation funnel, which was the funnel that you can actually see on the ground, never really eclipsed more than 1.5 miles. And there was one point that it was only about 1/4 mile across. But while that was happening, the actual tornado and the actual wind field was over 1 mile across. And so it's like, you see this tornado and it looks like it's far enough away from you, but then the winds start picking up. And then you're getting 300-mile-an-hour winds away from the condensation funnel. And it's like, I don't think I'm in the tornado, but I'm in the tornado. And that's what ended up killing the Weather Channel team, or not the Weather, the Twistex team of Tim Samaras and Ryan Clark and like all of them, is that they thought they had enough time, and they weren't in the actual condensation funnel, but they were in the tornadic windshield, and then a mini vorticity formed right over their car, and it ended up killing them tragically. But it's like, that's one of the things, is like, just because you can see the tornado doesn't actually mean like you're even safe. Like if you are seeing a tornado, there's a decent chance the tornado like wind field could already be towards you. And so it's like, it's really imperative that like you always keep your distance and you get to cover even if you can't see it. Like, always assume, if you're going to be under a warning or a watch or anything, that tornado is going to make a beeline for you, even if it's moving away from you, even if it's moving beside you, even if it's not there. Assume it's going to form and make a beeline towards you. That way you always play it safe, you always take cover, and you'll always survive.
Yeah, and that's something that's like super important. Like, we took our weather spotter class this past week, and like there was that video of a tornado crossing the road, and like it didn't hit that house, but the wind field behind it destroyed it completely.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the condensation funnel, and everybody's like, oh, well, look at it there. And they're like, the thing is if a tornado's not going left to right, it's coming straight at you.
Yeah.
So
Well,
like,
and tornadoes never go in a straight line.
Yeah.
I mean, many times, like, they will go all different directions. Like, it can start going north and then immediately go west and then immediately go east. Like, there is no rhyme or reason, and that's another thing we still don't know, and what the meteorology community still doesn't know, is how to predict when it's going to turn or what it's going to do. And that's what makes tornadoes so dangerous, is a tornado could be going in a straight line beneath your house, like, it's not going to hit you, and then it just turns and goes straight for you. And if you don't know how tornadoes work, you might just assume, oh, I'm fine, and it's just going to ride by me. But then it turns and it hits you, and that's where a lot of deaths and a lot of casualties come from tornadoes. It's not the people who see it coming towards them, but the people who think they're safe, and then it ends up turning and they're not, or the people who aren't taking it seriously and not going to where they need to.
And that's where, like, we want to develop the science. We want to make it to where we can predict that. But the thing is weather just always changes. And I think that's what the most difficult part about it is we aren't going to know for sure if it's going to, like, be forward motion. Like, because you have tornado speeds move completely different.
Yeah.
Like, every tornado, like, you can get an accurate wind measurement. You don't know the ground movement speed of that tornado. And, like, during the 2011 outbreak, the super outbreak, some of those tornadoes were moving 55 miles per hour on the ground, and they were already a mile wide. Like,
exactly.
What are you supposed to do?
Well, that's the thing about, like, I keep name-dropping the El Reno tornado here, but it went from, like, 25 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour in the span of 5 minutes. And it went from being 1/2 mile wide to 1.5 miles wide in 5 minutes. And there's no way to predict that.
No.
And the only way you can predict that is, like, either pure luck or just having that intuition, because some people have that certain intuition where they can really tell, like, this tornado is going to get bigger, this tornado is going to move this way, that kind of stuff. But so very few people have that, and there's a almost definitive chance that if you are in your house and there is a tornado warning happening, you don't have that ability.
Yeah.
So that's why, I mean, tornado watches mean you have to be on high alert. You have to be looking at your phone. You have to be looking at news stations and seeing where things are going to come. And then another thing is, like, if you get a warning of any kind, take shelter. take precaution, do what you need to, because tornadoes are no joke, like, at all. They will ravage communities. And with our changing climate, you know, there's talk that the tornado alley has moved from over the Great Plains closer to the Dixie region and closer to the southern region of Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi and Tennessee and places around there. But we don't know any of that for certain. And it's growing increasingly more likely that any place could get hit by a tornado. I mean, other than maybe, like, Los Angeles. But, like...
I mean, if that happened, that'd be worst case scenario.
It would. But, like... And the other thing is that, like, weather phenomena is becoming more intense with climate change. I mean, we saw that with our last outbreak that happened, the cold weather in early February and mid-February of this year. How, you know, places in Texas were in the negatives and Oklahoma was below freezing. Like here for 250 hours or something like that. Like, those things have happened before, but they're happening more often. They're happening stronger and more severely. So there's a good chance. Like, I mean, we haven't had an EF5 officially since 2013 when war happened, right?
Yes, it's been almost exactly 8 years.
And, like, what that means is, like, we are kind of overdue. And I think a lot of people, like, also forget that, like, the enhanced mojito scale is different than hurricane scales, because hurricane categories are pretty simple. The wind speed determines the category. So you get above 200 miles an hour, it's for sure a Category 5. You know, there's no way it's not going to be a Category 5. But with the tornado, if it's 300 miles an hour like El Reno was, but it doesn't hit anything, you know, it's in a rural area and doesn't actually hit any cities or any population or stuff like that, it's only going to be like an EF3 tornado because the enhanced mojito scale takes damage into account too. So that's why you don't want an EF5 to happen, because an EF5 means that it's hitting and causing damage and hurting people, and that's never what you want to see.
And that's the thing that we have with everybody's like, oh, well, that's an EF5. The thing is I'm sure we've probably had an EF5 since 2013. I'm sure there's tornadoes that could have been classified as it based on just wind speed. But if you look at the damage, you should be glad that it's not hitting any well-built structures at EF5 levels, because that's total destruction. There's nothing you can do about that. And we see this with hurricanes all the time. When it goes to a place that's less well-built, it completely destroys all the infrastructure there. Yeah. And it can cause economic crisis to happen, especially in foreign countries.
I've seen that, like, firsthand in the U.S. I happened to be in Florida about a week after Hurricane Michael hit, and we drove in the Panhandle, and we drove near Panama City and near some of those places that got hit directly head on, and the tree damage, because there was one point we were about 30 miles from the coast on Interstate 10, I think it was, or Interstate 20, one of the interstates, and to see such intense tree damage and building damage 30 miles from the coast just showed how strong Hurricane Michael was when it actually hit, and how some of those places that got hit were just completely destroyed. I mean, you also you look at what Laura did to what's that place in Louisiana that got hit?
It was like around the Lake Charles area.
Yeah, Lake Charles. Like, and there's this one city that begins with a C that I know was just like completely wiped off the map. You know, it's like things like that can also happen with tornadoes, and a lot of people don't realize that, because tornadoes are much smaller than hurricanes. Like, if a hurricane's going to hit a place on the Gulf Coast, there's a good chance places 100 miles on either side are going to feel its effects. But a tornado only goes through about a 2-mile area. So it's really, really unlikely that everyone is going to feel the effects. However, the people who are directly in that path are, like, they need to watch out, because it can get so destructive and so damaging.
And you can never predict, like, you don't know how a tornado is going to affect you.
Exactly.
You don't know until it's there, until it doesn't. And you don't want it to be there.
Yeah.
And, like, I know, like, right now, it's a good thing that we're discussing this now, because, I mean, the season's about to come up.
Yeah.
And we're in March, which is usually, like, the least active month, I guess, of storm season. And usually your higher is, like, April, May. So we're averaging, I'd say, the last couple of years, probably about less than 100. I'd say probably about, like, 80 tornadoes every March, and that's like counting your really small ones and your like big ones, just all like spotter reports wise. So we're in our small area right now, and we've already had a couple destructive tornadoes this year. And
yeah, Tulsa, around the Tulsa area in Oklahoma a few weeks ago. There's been some other ones too that I can't name.
There was some in Alabama.
Yeah.
I know Then there was some in like the one I talked about in North Carolina. We have these tornadoes happening so early, and I know that it's happened before. We've had like the Super Tuesday outbreak, which was like during like a February, I believe. I don't remember if that's February or not.
Yeah. I think Super Tuesday was in February.
Yes, and like you have tornadoes like that. Early season tornadoes are even more deadly than some of the spring tornadoes. And it seems like tornado season is almost like hurricane season, where it's coming quicker and quicker every year.
Yeah.
And it's coming more deadly.
Yeah.
Because we were hoping with hurricane season this year that we were going to finally, break the Cat 5 streak. We wouldn't have one this year.
Yeah.
And it just kept pushing and pushing. And the last one of the year became a Category 5.
Yeah. And there was some debate on if Laura should have been a 5 or if Ada should have been a Category 5, but regardless, I mean, we got into the Greek letters. It was extremely active, and blame that on the NHS NHC. Sorry, the NHC. Classifying more storms than normal. But regardless, we had an extremely active year, and there's been a lot of similarities this year to 2011, which I keep hearing brought up, and that is what is concerning me for this upcoming tornado season, is we have had some pretty, destructive tornadoes in the past few years, but we have really been missing a severe spring season and a severe storm season, and especially in the Tornado Alley. And with the way that we've had an extremely active winter with lots of cold, lots of, like snowfall and ice storms and stuff like that. I think I saw a statistic. Abilene, Texas has gotten as much snow as Philadelphia this year, which is insane to me because
especially
Philadelphia,
for deep south.
Yeah,
snow.
exactly. And like Oklahoma City's had an insane amount this year. I mean, it's not their record, but I mean, it is a lot. And it's really similar to how February 2011 was, where you had a big cold snap, you had a lot of snow. Overall, snow totals were pretty high that year. And what did that lead to? That led to a really severe spring season. You have, the April outbreak in Alabama and stuff like that. There's a lot of notable tornadoes you can name in 2011. And then you had an extreme drought and an extremely hot summer. So, especially with how climate change has evolved even over the last 10 years, who knows what we're in for this year. So that's why I think it's extremely important that everyone be paying a little bit extra attention this spring severe season, because while we can't really predict exactly what's going to happen, especially now, the conditions are definitely ripe, it seems, for a new unprecedented storm season.
And I know it's a very different outlook, in 2021 than it was 2011. That was seen as a once in a generation outbreak, never going to happen again. And I really don't think we'll ever get to that level again. But
yeah.
The thing is severity is going to be ramped up even more, especially because I don't know exactly about how much, but we're a lot hotter than we were in 2011. Yeah. And you can see the extreme cooling that far south. It's happened before in history, but it's happened a lot more often. And the thing is the instability of the weather is going to probably be very high this spring. I don't really know exactly how it's going to be, and we won't know until really the weather patterns start to develop. We had thunderstorms last night, which was, it was nice to see. We've really, for being somewhere that's known for their severe weather, it's been really quiet, and it's been a little too quiet.
Yeah, well, we have been sublimating a lot of that. Sublimating is not the right word. Supplementing that with, a lot of winter weather. I mean, we had a rare October ice storm that was catastrophic for this region. People in Norman were without power for weeks. We had tree damage that you can still see today. There's some parking spots that I've seen around here that still have tree limbs that are just laying there. And then you also have surprise snow happening a lot in December. You have such a historic cold outbreak. I mean, I walked out a couple weeks ago, Tuesday morning, and it was negative 14 here. And I've never felt anything like that, and that was pretty insane. So because of that, it's been a little bit more difficult to get severe weather because we've been cold. And so now that we're starting to get up in temperatures, I mean, it's only about in the 50s today, but I mean, it's been in the 70s the past couple days. You look at the outlook for the next few days, like Wednesday, I think it's March 10th.
We might get to the 80s.
Yeah, we might get to the 80s, and there is what looks to be some relative instability with a potential storm thing happening anywhere between Texas and Indiana some point next week. It's something that meteorologists are monitoring, and we're going to see how it develops as the week continues. But I'd say there's a non-zero chance that Oklahoma sees some sort of supercell next week or some sort of severe weather thing. And if it ends up being chaseable, make sure you stay tuned to suscore.wx on Instagram and Suscore Weather on all the other platforms. We have Twitter, YouTube, all that kind of stuff, because we will have content for that.
And we're definitely going to be looking out for that. It's been interesting, to say the least. I mean, being here in Oklahoma, I know that all of us are excited for, tornado season. That's why we came here, but the winter weather is something I never experienced in North Carolina. I know you haven't. It's never gotten that bad in Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, I lived through the infamous the footer of snow that happened in February 2010, where we got a foot of snow in Dallas. But a winter outbreak like this was a combined, it was a mix between the 1989 cold snap that came through Dallas that got us the negatives, and then the February of 2015 where we had multiple weather events back to back with snow, and it was just the perfect combination of intense winter weather that Dallas hadn't seen above an inch since 2015. So it's it was very interesting coming here and then having that to an even more amplified extent. And I'm well aware that won't happen, every winter that we're here, but to have it our freshman year here was just really cool.
It was pretty cool, and especially, I always say that, I've seen snow, but never to the level that we had it here.
Exactly.
It's always been wet snow mixed with ice. And this dry snow was good to see, but I know that we lost power here in the towers, and they told us we wouldn't, and it was just it's something that it was very unpredictable, and we had halls across campus that had 40-degree dorms, and it's unlivable situations, and it was even worse in Texas. What we're going to try to talk about Texas power crisis in depth next week. That sounds like something that we want to do, and we're going to get a few people from Texas to talk about that, and that's something that it's unprecedented, and I feel like that could be an issue that stems for the next couple decades, is we're going to have these winter weather and Arctic freezes that we never see coming until it happens. And luckily, we looked at the models. We knew that we were going to get some sort of winter weather, and that's something that's happened. Models have developed and starting to become a lot more accurate when it comes to I guess trends, rather than predicting exactly what's going to happen, but it can predict trends, and that's something that is going to get better and better.
Yeah, it's something I want to do for sure in the future. I'm still debating what part of meteorology I want to go into, but one of my potential options is I want to work on those computer models and see, because I know there is talk and movement towards making a unified forecasting system where, because I know that the North American model, the NAB, is getting discontinued in the next couple of years, and it's going to be replaced by a short-range GFS model, and hopes that, the GFS, the NAB, the HRRR, all of those get combined into one model, and we have a more unified forecasting system. I think that is really cool, and I would love to help work on some of those projects to make those even more accurate, because part of what makes these things so difficult is you can determine these things, a couple days in advance, but when it comes to, multiple days out, you think about how many lives can be saved by all of these events if you're more accurate even a few hours out, a few days out. And so it's like, how can we develop these computer programs to take better surface observations, better middle-level observations? I know there's I've read a few research papers about incorporating drones into mesonet sites to get more accurate readings of boundary layer level readings on, you know, what's happening there, because we have so few of those, just to help make our global network of weather monitoring greater. And just incorporating all that into a better forecasting system so we can save more lives, because ultimately that's what meteorology is about. You know, as much as it is awesome to watch storms and to look at tornadoes and feel these like extreme weather events that happen on occasion and stuff like that, the greatest purpose for meteorology seems to be to help the public endure. Because while we in the weather community, you know, weather enthusiasts like myself and professional meteorologists, well, they all know exactly what we need to be looking for weather and what to do to save ourselves. A lot of people just don't care. And a lot of people are very preoccupied with other things, and weather's on the last thing of their mind. I mean, so many people I know walk outside, they're like, oh, it's hot, or oh, wow, it's cold, and they just have no clue. Whereas, you know, I'm looking at these models for weeks in advance, so I know exactly what's going to be happening, you know, but a lot of them don't. And that's when you get a lot of deaths and a lot of injuries and a lot of issues from the weather, is from people who aren't having weather at the forefront of their mind, and then it catches them by surprise because they don't know more than a few days in advance.
Yeah, and that's why the entire, like, I feel like more universal models will come in handy.
Yeah.
And that's something that we need. And, like, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I want to do radar meteorology. I want to be, you know, be able to determine, like, how we can forecast days in advance. We have these models. Why not like, I know they use them to create these, like, risks the Storm Prediction Center will issue, but the thing is we don't ever really know how severe it gets. You can issue a slight risk, and it can become a moderate, and then they have to update it, but nobody's ever fully prepared for what's going to happen because you don't know.
Well, and if I remember correctly, I mean, I keep name dropping the El Reno tornado, but I think there was up to a moderate risk that day, and El Reno, the tornado happened in a slight region. So despite the fact that most of the OKC metro and a lot of central Oklahoma was in a moderate, the part that the El Reno tornado formed in was in a slight. So it's like, even though that was years ago now, it's still so difficult to pinpoint exactly where things will happen. And even if you're in a marginal risk, if there's a moderate risk somewhere near you, there's a decent chance that it could be off by a few miles or even a couple 100 miles, and you are right in the path of something destructive.
And, I mean, that's really all the things that we want to talk about tornado season. And I feel like it's more that we'll talk about it more, of course, like, as it's coming in. But the thing is right now we're just kind of anticipating something more active.
Yeah.
And I feel like we could get 2011 like season, maybe even 2013, like, destruction wise, and that's something that I don't want, but I know that it's possible. It's possible every year. I mean, last year was a pretty bad year, and we thought, like, oh well, we haven't had anything like the likes of this, but it seems to get worse every year. And I don't know. It's something we're gonna have to
and it's important to stress that we are not meteorologists. We are weather enthusiasts. And while we are in the meteorology field here, you know, being students, and wanting to go into the meteorology field, we aren't meteorologists. So what we say is from our own observations, from our own research we've done on our, you know, by ourselves and stuff like that. So we can say all these things about outlooks and stuff like that, but truthfully, we know not what will happen. So that's what makes it, and that's why our main message, at least my main message, and I know Drake's main message, is we know what we know from looking at our own research, but it's really, really important that you don't take what we say literally. Like, when we say we think we're going to have a very severe storm season, it doesn't mean that that's fact. And so if it ends up being nothing, you know, there's nothing we can do about that. But if there ends up being something even, you know, worse than what we're saying or something like that, that's also not on us. That is, we are not making any of those predictions. This is just our own insight on what we know. And it's really important that you always stay tuned to your local National Weather Service offices, wherever that is for you. You always are checking with your TV meteorologist. You know, it's super easy. Wake up in the morning if you have cable. You know, you can tune on to your weather channel or tune on to your local news station and see what the meteorologists are saying there. Or if you don't have that, follow them on Twitter, see what their updates are, because I can't tell you a TV meteorologist that doesn't post the same updates on Twitter or post the same updates on the website. You know, like in Dallas, there's WFAA. You go to WFAA.com, they've got a radar, they've got a recap from everything they do from their weather forecast in the morning. So there are so many tools, and that's what I really love about meteorology is that, like, all of this is free. Their weather is not privatized to a point to where you have to pay for weather. Anything that you need to know you can find for free, and I hope weather stays that way. But that's also what makes it really, really important that you use what resources you have and just check the weather from time to time. You know, it's okay if you walk outside, you didn't know it was supposed to be raining, or you walk outside, you didn't know it was going to be 70 instead of 50, you know, but storms happen really quickly. And they evolve rapidly, and it's very important to trust the people who have gotten their degrees and trust the people who have spent their whole life to studying this stuff, you know, and make sure that you pay attention to what they say, not what your friends say, not what your dad says or what your sister says or something like that, but trust what the meteorologists say, because ultimately they're probably going to be the ones who are accurate and correct.
Yeah. Something that I just want to add on to that. If you don't use your Apple Weather app to determine what you're going to use, if you have like, see, in Oklahoma, we have the Mesonet, which is like, it helps a lot because we'll get more accurate storm reports, but like, your weather services Colin was talking about earlier will issue their own forecast, and that's better than any Weather Channel forecast. You want your local meteorologist forecast, and everywhere has a local NWS office, and even like ours was issuing a spotter training, so we went to that and we were able to get trained and learned about all the weather events. And they even they have an in-depth website that gives you forecasts, or you can even go back and look at past data. It's so much better than just, oh well, it's gonna be partly cloudy and 73 today. Like, you get your chances of rain. Like, Apple will tell you 2 weeks, I can look to next week and it's 30% chance of rain, and then the next day it's not there.
Yeah.
So weather is changing, but you want to always be with the people that are closest to you, because those trained meteorologists that you have are going to be able to determine it a lot better than some weather app on your phone.
Yeah, and what also is important to remember is even the trained people aren't 100% accurate, and they can miss things. Like here in Norman, Oklahoma, on February 11th and February 12th of 2021 this year, we had 2 consecutive days of snowfall. The first day, it snowed for about 4 or 5 hours in the starting in the morning and ended about midday with light dusting. And then the second day, there were some places that got up to a half inch. And neither day did anyone on the NWS, did anyone from the Weather Channel, did any of the weather apps, did any of the meteorologists say anything about it, because it was lake effect snow, and it was something that none of the computer models, even the most accurate high-res models, said nothing about it, and it was surprise snow. And while that doesn't really affect too much, because it was very dry snow and it wasn't really going to impact travel, that's one of those things that no one could see coming. Other than maybe the most trained people of all time who are looking at that kind of stuff. But it was one of those rare instances where we got 2 days of surprise snow. And it's a testament to how unpredictable weather can be, because even when all the eyes were on us, because that was where the intense winter stuff was going to happen, they still missed lake effect snow, It's one of those things, it happens all the time in the north. They've always got it, Lake Erie I always see is having lake effect snow, and Chicago's always getting lake effect snow from the lake that they're next to. I think it's Lake Michigan. Or maybe it's Lake Superior. I have no clue. I'm not from Chicago. But they always get lake effect snow, but it's not something you really think about with Lake Stanley Draper in Oklahoma, I can't tell you the last time that happened. So it's just one of those things that, weather is always unpredictable, and it's always changing, and it's always something you should pay attention to, because even the most trained people won't have all the information they need.
Yeah. So now we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back to you with an interview with some of our friends who are from Florida, so they can talk about hurricane season, how their experiences have been, and we're excited to bring that to you. See you on the flip side.
Yeah, give it up for Sage and Tyler.
Alrighty, we're back with the Whether or Not podcast. It's me, Drake, and I'm here with my co-host, Colin.
What's up, guys?
We have two special guests today. We have Sage Lale and the boy, Tyler Forecast, here to talk about hurricane season with us. And it's going to be a pretty entertaining conversation. So I'm here. Hoping you guys are tuned in, having a good time. Anything you want to say, Colin, before we get into this?
I've been to Florida at least 4 times, and I enjoyed it every time I was there. And Sage, Tyler, do you guys enjoy Florida?
Yes,
I enjoy it a lot.
I do live there. Not right now,
That's
but
true.
I live there too. Not now either, but yeah. I mean, pretty epic state. Not gonna lie.
I would say it's in my top 5, if not number 1.
Top 5.
What's number 1?
Florida.
Okay.
That would be your top 5.
It's in his top 5. Yeah, he's right.
Yeah, Florida's in my top 50 states, actually.
That
Oh
really?
wow, nice.
Yeah.
It's in my top 52.
Nice. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
Okay,
Puerto
you
Rico.
sound like you don't. Okay, maybe that's a separate conversation.
Anyways, so we're gonna talk about hurricane season. I know, being from Florida, you guys are used to hurricanes. It's kind of like how Oklahoma is known for tornadoes. Florida's known for hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, what's some cool hurricane stories that you guys have for Florida?
Sage, you want to go first?
I can. So I remember deeply. I don't remember how old I was. I'd have to assume it was the 2005 season. Either that or the 2004 season. It was rough. I was roughly that around 4 or 5. During those seasons, and I remember this is my earliest memory of really weather, and it was of my windows being boarded up, and of just preparation and being prepared for what I had no clue what was going on. I had no clue what weather was coming. I didn't know what a hurricane was, but I knew that something was coming. And from what I understand, that was the 2004 season when Central Florida got multiple hurricanes, and I was told from my parents later on that the school in my county had been canceled for weeks. And
Wow.
there was just that's how serious they take hurricanes there. And for people that are from, I don't know, say the Northwest, where they don't, or of the United States, of course, the Northwest, where they don't get hurricanes, that might sound weird. You might get snow days, but in Florida, there's hurricane days where you just don't go to school because there is Mother Nature giving you the brunt of what it has, the strongest it can give you, the storm surge, the wind, and that I remember that. And I know a few years ago, back when Hurricane Irma came through, I think I was in 10th grade. This is the storm that actually inspired me to become a meteorology major. Hurricane Irma canceled school for about a week. And I remember afterwards having to go and clean up my yard from all the branches. I had to throw out an orange tree I had in my yard, the most Florida thing you can have, an orange tree being destroyed by a hurricane.
Very Florida.
So I remember having to do that. And believe it or not, I lived where the eye went over. But instead of going out in the eye, I took a nap. I slept through Hurricane Irma.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fun.
You had 100, 130, 120 mile per hour, whatever category it was at the time, in Central Florida, bearing down on my house. You could hear the whistling out the window, and I thought it was a good time to take a nap. So, kind of shows you how seriously I was taking the event.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of Floridians from what I've heard from everyone
Hurricane
I know who
parties.
went through it there.
Are
Hurricane
those,
parties.
Are those a thing? Do you guys actually have hurricane parties?
Yes, they are actually. During Hurricane Irma, and before during Dorian in 2018, me and my brother were like, "Oh, we're gonna have a hurricane party and all that." And I guess we can just roll into my experiences with hurricanes and all that. So, anyways, I guess my earliest experience with hurricanes would be 2005 season with Katrina and Wilma. And if you don't know, everyone knows Katrina because it hit New Orleans, but before it hit New Orleans, it passed through Florida as a Category 1.
Uh-huh.
And then strengthened again and hit New Orleans. But I experienced 2 of those major hurricanes that year, Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Wilma, which was the latest of that season.
Yeah,
Or the
Wilma was intense.
latest strong hurricane, really. And that one I remember pretty well because, I mean, that's honestly what pushed me to want to be a meteorology major. Like, ever since then, I've been pretty interested in the weather after having to go through Wilma. And I really just remember how much it changed everything around where I live, because we lived on the east coast of Florida, and that's where it mainly impacted. Even though it hit the west coast, it really ramped up when it hit the east coast of Florida as it crossed over. And I think we were without power for a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks,
Wow.
I think. And I just remember how much it changed everything, and like it was just a pretty cool. And like I just remember, like I remember vividly going out in the eye of this storm with my dad to pick up some like debris that was thrown around outside. He's like, "Hurry up, Tyler! We got we only got a few minutes before the other side of the eye comes through."
Wow.
And here's me just riding a little tricycle outside, helping him pick up like
Yeah, because
debris and everything.
Tyler, you were about 4 whenever Wilma came through, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so those are pretty early memories. So like, I can't really think of too many memories for me that are before the age of 4. So to like have some of your first like true concrete memories be in something so destructive like that is really, really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And with Wilma, I just remember like because it knocked out power like across the entire southern part of the state. At night, you could see the night sky like so vividly and everything. We'd have cookouts every night. I mean, I associated hurricanes with having fun at that point because like, yay, cookouts and all that.
Yeah.
And then ever since then, I've always been like excited. Like that was like I think one of the last one of the last seasons I really remembered after wanting like being interested in the weather. And then like around 2014 and on, like there was like a gap year. I think it was 2012, 2015. I think where like Florida was just a bubble where no storms would hit.
Yeah.
And then we got into like the 2017 season where we got Irma, which I was like, yes, finally. And unlike Sage here, who decided to sleep through Irma,
I was excited. I just fell asleep.
dude,
I fell asleep at 10 p.m., dude. That's like early for me.
Okay. I mean, my parents, they forced me and my family to evacuate to South Carolina, which I was not happy about at all. Like, they had to literally drag me into the car. I did not want to leave. But yeah, those are some of my experiences with hurricanes.
Yeah. So I take it that, so obviously you didn't stay through Irma, but would you say Wilma or Katrina was the strongest hurricane you've ever been in, or was there a different one that was stronger that you stayed through?
I'd say either Wilma or Katrina because Matthew never made landfall. Dorian, which seemed like it was going to hit us, never made landfall.
No, man. You're good. Yeah.
And I mean, it's really just Wilma and Katrina. Those are like the 2 hurricanes I remember the best out of all the ones I've experienced. But yeah, I think those are the two most powerful ones I've experienced.
Yeah, so this is like just like a question for me, but like, so as someone who grew up in Dallas, Fort Worth, hurricanes are the last thing we ever get. I mean, the only 2 hurricanes that have ever affected us were Hurricane Ike, which hit the Texas coast in 2008, and Hurricane Harvey, which hit the Texas coast in 2017. But both of those only minimally affected DFW because we got basically like a thunderstorm from it, which was no different than any other like spring or summer day. So while I've experienced, like a derecho before, and I've experienced, supercells that had produced tornadoes before, I've never actually been anything close to hurricane force, type winds or rainfall or stuff like that. So, given your guys' experience with hurricanes, what's like the number one thing that you see in like videos of hurricanes that doesn't capture what it's actually like in real life? Because I mean, like, obviously I've seen hundreds of videos of hurricanes and it looks like the wind is howling and it looks like the rain's going down. Obviously you're not actually there. So what's the one thing about like being there for a hurricane that's just completely different and that just can't be captured on video?
I feel like a lot of it starts with the emotion and the days before. So when you're that Saturday, like I think Irma made impact on a Monday. I think it was the Labor Day Monday.
Uh-huh.
And the Saturday and Sunday before, the culture or the environment of the city, and you can tell that's everything that in anything. I think I said that wrong, but regardless, it's on everyone's mind. Everyone is thinking about how to prepare, what they should do, what their loved ones are doing, and what is the best course of action for them before this hurricane.
Yeah,
it's ultimately the fear of what could go wrong, and you could lose everything. Everything could be lost. I lived in Central Florida, literally as far away from the coast, but all it takes is one tree to fall down onto your house. It could take one plywood to fly through the window and hurt someone. It's the fear of what you could lose from this storm, from this singular storm, this one thing that could take the people you care about away, and it's scary. It should be scary.
Yeah, that's really well said. Yeah, especially just because, like, I mean, obviously we've all lived through severe or historic weather events, you know, and,
Right.
but there's just something different about that, you know, when you say that, because, like, I think about how we all reacted when, you know, like just a month ago or a month and a half ago, whenever we knew that winter storm was going to be coming that hit here in Norman on Valentine's Day weekend. And the feelings there were different because you could tell there was something in the air about everyone's like anticipating something, but it was almost excitement because we were anticipating school being let out, and the cold started well before, you know, the actual storm came, and the blizzards are really cool, but we weren't really thinking about, oh my god, we could lose everything, oh my god, everyone could be hurt or stuff like this. It was just kind of like, let's make sure we have enough food in case we lose power, but we'll make the best out of it. We'll go sledding, we'll have fun. And just from the way you described Hurricane Sage, it doesn't sound like it's necessarily that at all when a hurricane comes. You know, it's a lot scarier.
Right.
Yeah, for hurricanes, like, at least from what I've experienced, like, whenever Florida's within the cone of uncertainty with any hurricane, all, like, just chaos ensues among, like, your population, pretty much. I mean, you'll see long lines at gas stations. You'll probably have to wait like an hour to get gas at certain gas stations. You'll see people buying waters. Stores will be out of drinks, everything. I mean, you'll see people buying plywood. I mean, you'll drive out of your neighborhood and you'll see everyone either putting up plywood or closing their shutters and stuff. I mean, it's kind of a surreal feeling in a way. I mean, I usually am excited for these kind of things, and sometimes I kind of have to remind myself, like, hey, these are kind of dangerous, because that kind of hit me when Dorian was off our coast hitting the Bahamas and just kind of just sat there. Because right as it started to slow down, I realized if this hits the east coast of Florida, everything's going to be leveled.
Yeah.
I mean, thank God it didn't, but like, it's still horrible what happened to the Bahamas because of that storm. It sat over the Bahamas for, I believe, 48 hours over.
Those days.
I
It was
know
a few days.
a lot of people were comparing Dorian, at least before they knew it was going to turn, to what happened with Andrew.
Yeah.
You know, with how devastating that was for Florida. I mean, Dorian was strengthening, and it looks like it was strengthening. It looks like it was just going to hit right on the side of Florida. I still don't know why it decided to stall over the Bahamas and then drift northward. I don't know if Florida like put some kind of like curse over their state to get all the demons of the weather gods away or something like that. But it was just so impressive to me that like it didn't just slam right into the side of the coast.
It's interesting that you bring up Andrew, because I feel like they're different, but they're very similar. Like the results might have been very similar, but from what I remember, what made Andrew dangerous was the area it hit.
Exactly.
The area
just south of Miami.
The South Miami area got devastated because it was not prepared for that strength of a hurricane.
Also, another thing with Andrew is before it made landfall, it was a Category 4. Now, Floridians, they look at like hurricanes as like, if it's not a 5, I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
Or at least most of them do, or like a good portion of them. So most Floridians in the Miami area went to sleep as Andrew was a Category 4. They woke up the next morning. Actually, no, I think it was. Not exactly sure. I know it intensified.
It hit overnight, actually, I think.
It did hit overnight. I know most people went to sleep, and it was a lower category than when it hit, which was a Category 5. And then by that time, it was too late for anyone to evacuate or anything.
Yeah.
So that's what made that storm particularly more destructive.
Yeah, I read a
Yeah.
really good book on Hurricane Andrew. I really wish I remember what the name of it was, or else I'd definitely name drop it and tell everyone to read it. But I mean, just some of the anecdotes from that storm were just so scary because you guys are exactly right about how a lot of people were discounting it because it looked like it was going to like weaken as it made landfall, like most hurricanes do. But it was one of the few ones that it got closer and closer and just strengthened, and it happened overnight, and most people had no clue, and so it just completely demolished. And that's what I've seen is like it tends to be a growing trend that I've seen very recently that hurricanes aren't really de-intensifying as they get towards land. I mean, we saw this with Michael, a couple years ago. I know that didn't hit y'all's side of or y'all's area in Florida, but I mean Panama
Panhandle.
City and a lot of them, they got. I mean, I talked about this earlier in the podcast that we did when it was just Drake and I, but I actually was in Florida in the Panhandle a week after Michael hit.
Wow.
And I was about 30 miles north of the coast. I forget what interstate it is. It might be Interstate 10. I'm not entirely sure.
I think so.
But we were
I-10,
driving through. We were driving through, and there was insane tree damage there. And I was just kind of thinking, like, if there's insane tree damage 30 miles off the coast, what the heck does it look like on the coast,
So me and Tyler know what you're talking about. We drove from Central Florida to Norman, Oklahoma, back in January, and you can still see the fallen trees.
Like there are trees
off the interstate. The interstate still has tree damage. I mean, like it's not on the interstate or anything, but if you look into the woods that surrounds the interstate, you can still see all the woods that have fallen. Like this is the woods that people don't live in or don't go in. So there's no reason for them to go and clear it up. So it's a raw example of untouched
hurricane damage.
Hurricane damage, yes.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like that wasn't even the first time I'd been on there. I'd driven to Destin, Florida before, so I'd been on I-10 there before, and I remember the trees being just so pretty and so beautiful there. And then I remember, and especially because it was in November too,
right?
So like whenever Michael hit, so like the trees had already started to lose some of their leaves, but I mean it was just you could see for miles nothing but branches and tree damage, and it was harrowing. And we stopped at this one gas station, and I don't even know how they're still in business because half of it was like falling apart, and we were still we were 30 miles off the coast, so we were like nowhere near the actual landfall site. But that's just one of like many cases of recent hurricanes like Laura, Ada, Iota, all those intensifying as they hit land.
Yeah.
Dorian, going back to the contrast between Andrew and Dorian, and I think Michael is a great example of a similar case to Dorian. Is the hurricanes are slowing down, and this goes into the, I believe we're talking about this, is the 2021 hurricane season and why things are changing with it. Why is the hurricane 2021 season already in the news if it hasn't started yet? And storms are starting earlier. They're slowing down.
They're stopping. They're ending later in the season.
They're ending later. Yes.
I mean, we saw with the 2020 season.
It is more than half the year, and you're gonna find yourself living in the hurricane season majority of the year now, because the season's longer. The storms have gotten slower, as you can see with Dorian. Dorian sat over and devastated the Bahamas.
At one point, it was literally stationary, just sitting there.
I remember checking the Weather Channel to see, okay, where is it moving? And I saw how fast it was moving, 0 miles per hour. It was in the midst of making a 90-degree turn, something I haven't seen in my many years of watching. And I'm young, but still, I've watched hurricanes since I was a kid, and I've yet to see a hurricane make a 90-degree turn such as Dorian did.
Which I'm super lucky for Florida, but just also so interesting and devastating for the Bahamas.
Yeah. You go back to that idea of hurricanes just being Mother Nature just unleashing on planet Earth. And I remember seeing this video of a family in their attic as the roof shingles are being ripped off.
Wow.
And the rain pouring in and them crying out for mercy.
Yeah.
As it's either go down and be swallowed by the water or let go and let the wind carry you away and die.
Yeah,
and
neither of those are good.
It's dark. but it's the reality of modern hurricanes.
Yeah, and something that's very interesting, and I'll let you guys talk about, your kind of early season predictions for what you guys might think happened with the hurricane season for 2021. But something really interesting that's been brought to my attention just over the past couple of days is looking at some of the raw data with surface temperatures. So over the past, few years, we've seen a growing trend that Gulf waters are getting hotter and they're hot by the coast. And that's been influencing, I think, a lot of this like rapid intensification right by the coast. However, something that's happened is with that polar vortex that came down here, in February, it has caused a shift in the temperature for Gulf waters. I just saw the latest readings where it was a cool 60 degrees off of the coast of Texas, which is really, really rare. Usually it's already 70 or 80 degrees by now, especially because the Gulf gets really hot. So I'm wondering, will that polar vortex and will the delaying of rising temperatures for the sea levels, do you think that's going to have any effect on the hurricane season this year? Will that make Gulf storms a little bit less intense, or will it shift some of the warmer water away? I mean, do you guys have any takes on that, or how that's going to affect the season?
Well, it is just now March, and hurricane season usually doesn't start till mid to late May. That's still a lot of time for the Gulf to warm up. And especially, it's going to be bringing in warmer waters from the Caribbean into the Gulf, which should probably warm it up. But
True.
I still think there's a lot of time for things to change. And this kind of touches on the idea that the National Hurricane Center is changing the date that they issue tropical weather outlooks. Tropical weather outlooks will now start on May 15th, which is different than what it used to be, which would be the start of the season, which was June 1st, which may signal that the date may be changing in the future, that the start of the Atlantic hurricane season will likely be moved up in the next 2 to 3 years, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the polar vortex, in my opinion, I don't think that has impacted the Gulf in a late enough time in the year to where it'll make enough of a difference. And given where hurricanes and tropical storms typically form in the early season, I don't believe that is the area to be watching early in the season, as the Gulf usually warms up to a significant make a significant effect in the season, and around July, August, September.
Mainly September. August and September is where
August and
hurricane
September
season really starts ramping up.
Yes, those are the months to watch. So I would be watching more so the Atlantic right now, like the
Atlantic Basin, pretty much.
Mid-Atlantic, out in the Caribbean is a good area to watch. I don't expect. It tends to be that the hurricanes and the tropical systems that form in early season don't impact land in a significant fashion. It's usually a lot of, like, if we look at the 2020 season, there are the first, I think, 6 or 7 systems to form are all tropical storms. And tropical storms, while devastating to communities that can't handle it, to the United States can handle it.
Yeah.
Florida is built for at least category 3s now. A category 3 will not, it'll hurt, but Florida will not be put down for long. And I think that goes for most of the coast up until Virginia and most of the Gulf Coast. So I think that the area to be watching is definitely where it has always been. I think that since the season may be moving forward, we can still keep an eye on the summer months, but I think once you get closer to the fall, say August and September.
Really, it's just late August into all of September into like early October, maybe November. That's where you really
those are still the months to be watching for those devastating Cat 4s and 5s.
So do you think that, and I have this question, do you think since, we had the polar vortex, that like the season, even though like, and I know we'll talk about this later, how they moved the season, they're going to start the outlooks starting May 15th. Do you think because we had this polar vortex that we might have a like later developing hurricane season, because the temperatures would usually be warmer than they are now? And I know you were talking about, I know the Atlantic Basin will probably be more active than the Gulf this year, and the Gulf was very active last year. But could that lead to like a delay in the season where it actually starts later? Do you think that's a thing?
I don't think it will. I mean, over the past, I believe it's 4, maybe even 5 years, we've had storms that have formed in May, all tropical storms. Most of those, depending on where they form, I've seen them form in the Atlantic Basin. I've seen them form in the Gulf at the same time.
Right.
So if the Gulf is still too cold for tropical development by the time we roll into May, we could still, depending on the amount of Saharan dust in the Atlantic Basin at the time, we could still see tropical storm development.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
well,
agree. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I was also looking at the latest INSO outlooks and stuff like that, and a common trend is that in La Nina years you get active hurricane seasons, and we had a INSO neutral to La Nina year last year. We obviously know that last year was a very, very active hurricane season.
Yes.
And based on all of the latest El Nino and La Nina outlooks and stuff like that, we are not going to get above an INSO neutral, and we might be in a La Nina to start the hurricane season.
Yes.
We've had a persistent La Nina over the winter and stuff like that. So all of that kind of points to at least an active hurricane season. Will we have 2020 levels? Probably not. I mean, that's like a once in every 50 year, maybe once a lifetime event. But it is quite possible that we have yet another active year this year, just based on the fact that we are going to go probably through another La Nina, and we've had a strong La Nina since then.
I would say let's not discount 2021 yet. We've had, I think, 4 to 5 years of this is unheard of. 4 to 5 years, every single season we have had a Cat 5.
Yeah, from 2016 to 2020, we've had at least one Category 5 in the Atlantic Basin.
And I think it was it 2018 or was it 2017? I believe it was 2017. We had 2017 Cat 5s, and then obviously we had the devastating Category 4 Harvey and Jose. We've had all of these very strong hurricanes. So I wouldn't say count it out yet. I think we could still see equivalent levels, to be honest. Maybe it'll be focused more over the summer. Maybe we'll see a Category 3 form in early July. You can't tell right now. If things are just things are just keep changing, and they're becoming new to where the old data honestly just doesn't matter anymore. It's the past 10 years that are honestly, they show you what is going on with the Atlantic Basin, and you need to pay attention to the past decade to see what we can expect. And I think that 2020 is a great example of a season that was expected to underperform, that
overperform really, and then also kick 2005 out of the water for most active season on record.
Exactly. Going off of a season, anything is going to seem like child's play after an active season like 2020. But if you just look at other seasons like 2017, 2018, even 2019, you can see that those seasons weren't anything to laugh at. I don't think 21 will be anything to laugh at. It is time to prepare now. You need to get what is it? Find your kids, find your wife.
Exactly. Well, and what I keep seeing and what everyone in the weather community keeps saying is they keep mentioning the year 2011. Because we had the strong polar vortex in the beginning part of the season. We had a persistent La Nina, lots of winter and ice events in the exact same places. You're looking at earthquakes are happening at similar rates to they were in 2011 in about the same places. And what that means is you get a very active storm season for, like the Great Plains region, which also then, if we have a persistent La Nina, leads to a drought for part of the U.S., but also a very active hurricane season. I know a lot of people don't really mention 2011 whenever we talk about hurricane seasons, but that was a pretty active season. It had 20 storms that year, which is nothing to laugh at. It had Hurricane Irene, which, it's if you look at all the recent ice storms, that's obviously not the worst that we've had, but it was still it was a pretty destructive Category 3 hurricane. And we also had Hurricane Ophelia, which is a Category 4 hurricane that came up. It was pretty strong, got down to 940 millibars. And that was one of those cases that it was just kind of luck that no real big Category 5 or no real destructive hurricane hit anywhere. But if you look at the conditions for that year, they're pretty similar to how the El Nino and La Nina conditions look now, which could be, it's pretty likely that we'll have another active hurricane
Right.
season for the 5th year in a row.
Right. And I'm looking at the 2011 hurricane season right now. And I think it kind of holds true to what me and Tyler were saying. The Atlantic will likely be the more active part of the actual ocean. The Atlantic Ocean will be more active than, say, the Gulf.
Yeah.
If you're listening and you want to look at what I'm saying right now, you can. The Gulf has probably 2 or 3 storms that actually go through it, and then you see just a very active Atlantic, which means that more so the Atlantic coast is what we should be worried about right now. The Gulf might actually catch a break, and I know Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Louisiana as a whole really needs a break.
If you've paid
for a
attention to
season.
the hurricane season in 2020, Lake Charles did not specifically. That's where it made landfall. I think 3 systems made landfall there. So the Atlantic should definitely be what we're paying attention to right now. I think areas such as that tend to get more Atlantic activity, more hurricane activity, such as Florida, North Carolina, those states should definitely be watching their coastlines. I think that systems if we're going off of historical data, especially, and not just our gut feelings, if you will. 2011 could definitely be I could definitely see a mix between 2011 and 2020, maybe just as many systems as 2020, with more trends that tend to be more Atlantic based, like 2011.
Mhm.
Yeah, so one of the seasons that when I kind of think about that's kind of like an amalgamation of those 2 seasons, I think a lot about 2017. Because most of the strong 2017 storms were Atlantic based. I mean, you had that one time where you had Irma, Jose, and Maria, all of which became very destructive hurricanes. Did all of them become Category 5s? Or
Not Jose.
Not
Jose
but,
only got up to a Category 4, but
all major hurricanes back to back that are all in the Atlantic basin. I don't think. I mean, those were not Gulf storms. Those were ones that hit Haiti, hit the Bahamas, hit Florida, hit Bermuda, hit places in the Atlantic Ocean. So we could very easily see something akin to 2017, maybe even slightly more active, maybe with maybe a few more destructive hurricanes, maybe a few less destructive hurricanes. The thing is, we're not going to know exactly what path all these hurricanes are going to take, if we're going to get lucky and all of them are just going to go fishing and none of them's going to hit landfall, or if we get really unlucky and you get a lot of U.S. landfalls. It's just
that's the thing with hurricane seasons. Like with hurricane seasons, most people take 2011 for example. You yourself, you said not many people really remember 2011 as a bad season, although it had a fair amount of storms. Not really any of them made landfall. I think one tropical storm made landfall in Louisiana, and one storm made landfall near New York. And it's not many people will remember a season that doesn't have a lot of landfalls. At least here in the U.S., people won't remember it. But then you have seasons like, for example, let's see. We have 2016, Hurricane Matthew.
Yeah, that's exactly
came
what
up
I
the
was
coast
thinking.
and hit South Carolina and North Carolina.
I hated Matthew.
Yeah, and because 2016 as a season was relatively underwhelming. I mean, it wasn't really anything much to write home about, but you had Hurricane Matthew in there. And a lot of people remember Hurricane Matthew, and that kind of started. Hurricane Matthew is almost like the start of the past half decade of really, really intense hurricanes and hurricane seasons. So although 2016 as a whole wasn't really much to write home about, that is what made it very memorable, was Hurricane Matthew. And the same thing happens a lot for winters around here and stuff like that. For instance, you'll take a winter that really is relatively warm, relatively mild, but you get one big snowstorm, and that's all everyone remembers the winter for. Even that 5-6 inch snowstorm we got, stuff like that. Whereas you could have another one where you get an inch snow every single week or every single couple of weeks. But if you're not getting that big hard hitting storm, then a lot of people are just that was a pretty normal winter, even if it was on average way worse. Yeah. So do you guys have any final remarks you guys want to make about hurricanes like that? Any anecdotes, just any other further outlooks, any discussion points?
Anything else just in general, hurricane wise, or even something you want to talk about that's not a hurricane? Anything you got?
So if we're concluding, I'd like to briefly. I mean, I think I've been the mongering one today. With
How
with the
dare you?
given the topic, I think I'm justified. I don't usually. I mean, when it comes to weather, I'm a lot like that, but I'm usually a lot more relaxed. But if you're more so interested in learning more about weather, I implore people to continue to listen to future podcasts. I think we're going to be going over a wide range of topics, and
Yeah.
I think you guys are doing a great job putting it together right now. More so about hurricanes. I'm sure me and Tyler will come back on, or just Tyler, or just me, talk about specifics such as I'm sure we can go even like we could probably go hurricane by hurricane with the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. The 2020 Atlantic hurricane season is at right now, given the data, an anomaly, and should be honestly discussed further in given like just like I said, just a hurricane by hurricane discussion. That because in my opinion, each storm in this year is unique in its own way, and
Exactly.
could be tackled in so many different fashions.
Yeah.
So, I'd be happy to go on about the Atlantic hurricane season so much more. At a different date. Like it's such a fascinating season. And for this season outlook, I think pay attention to what the Weather Center and the Weather Service are saying. Like this season could be a 2020 season, it could be a 2011 season, somewhere in between. We don't know right now. There could be one storm that could be dangerous for the United States. There could be several, like the 2017 season. So pay attention. Be prepared, especially if you're living near the coast. So
yeah, and
that is the last thing I have to say. So
and just keep a lookout for that new issue date of the Outlook on May 15th by the National Hurricane Center.
Put that on my calendar.
Yeah, or did
All
that.
right. Thank you for your guys' time. I hope definitely to bring you guys back on soon, and we'll definitely go over that 2020 like year in review.
And we're excited to talk about all things with you guys, whether or not.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tyler and Sage, for that awesome insight on hurricane season. We're definitely going to have them on again. I think
for sure. I mean, they bring such good insight being from Florida that they're a lot of times on ground zero for those hurricanes. And I know a lot of them, they both study hurricanes a lot more than I do, for sure.
Yeah.
So
I'm more of a tornado guy myself.
I'm definitely your winter weather guru.
Yeah, but speaking of winter weather, did you see those models?
Yeah, there were some models that were showing a potential St. Patrick's Day snowstorm for Oklahoma. I don't really want to say that it's that legitimate, but both the Euro and the GFS are showing it, and that's pretty good for me. But it is still 14 days out, or it's over a week out, so let's not worry too much about that.
Let's not worry too much about that, but
winter may have one final beck and call.
And the funniest thing is that it's happened 2 holidays in a row.
Exactly.
We'll have Valentine's and St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, so look out for the Easter snowstorm this year, apparently.
I mean, it's just going to keep coming, yeah, and we might have snow in July.
Hey, who knows?
Christmas in July will be a real thing this year.
Yeah, might not have to fly to Australia.
Yeah. But, other than that, any final remarks you have before we close this out?
No, I just want to thank everyone for listening. I know this is our first podcast, so there's going to be a few rough edges, but it'll only improve over time, and as long as you stay with SUSCORE, you'll always be up to date on everything you need, and you'll have a good time while doing it.
And all I gotta say is that we're always welcome to have a guest on the podcast. If you want to come talk about weather, just give us a message on suscore.wx on either Twitter or Instagram. And really, just I hope you guys have a great day, and tune in again next week. We're gonna have some interesting topics. And we're also going to do a question and answer thing for anything you guys leave for us. All right. Have a good rest of your week.